Howdy folks, I am Rebecca Jolly, the Jolly Alchemist, and today I am going to be looking at a neutrino forecast for Thursday, the 6th of November 2025. I'm going to show you just a little bit, not what I usually do, and then we can talk, so let's do that. Alright, here we have the journal notes. Okay. And then I'm going to look there at what's going on while I do some talking about what's going on. In fact, what I think I will do is show you the activations that are for this day, and then switch around for a minute and talk, and then I'm going to bring it back when I hopefully get around to talking about Art Garfunkel. That's what we're looking at today. So, wow, so much to cover today. So today we have a new quarter, the fourth quarter. We have a new cross that is of the Sphinx. We have a new grouping that is of Gate 1, the creative, and all kinds of new things to discuss. So, I talked a little bit yesterday about what it means to be in the new quarter, how we're in the fourth quarter of mutation, and we were just looking at the wheel just a second ago, where yesterday I went in and looked at that specifically so that you could see where we are on the wheel, where we're looking, and where we're going. So in your view, it would be like around here on the wheel and moving that way. In fact, I believe, yeah, this is a messy example because I've been doing a bunch of other research and things on it, but you can see that it's basically this right here, where we have the strong line separating, and the first gate is what we're looking to focus on in this chart as the wheel is turning this way. The wheel always goes in that direction. Not always, but mostly. For most things. For most of the planets, it does move that way. Counterclockwise. So that puts us into the Sphinx, because the Sphinx is the cross of directions. All these kinds of directions are coming out of the G center. So we have the 1 facing up out of the G center, the 2 facing down, and then we have, of course, the 7 and the 13. And so what we're looking at here is a matter of perspectives on the driver. So let me explain that concept. I do not have a cheat sheet on hand, unfortunately. So I will just explain it. But you know what? I think I'll make some short videos talking about this as well with the cheat sheet so that you can see a visual representation. So for now, I'll just talk about it. It has to do with the metaphor of us being passengers in the car of life. You know, we all, because of the way we're raised, we want to think that we are the drivers. We're in control of our lives. We have this feeling like we have free will. There's another subject to talk about sometime. Specifically because Ra definitely backs up what's coming to be known as pretty much the thing, which is that we don't actually have free will, only the appearance of free will. But that's not the subject for right now. So the subject for right now is the driver, and the driver of the car of our lives is in this second gate, in this magnetic monopole. It's individual circuitry. And oh, the whole concept of the magnetic monopole and discussing that is a whole nother ball of wax. Okay, I don't want to get into all that right now. All I want to say is just some basic information. So imagine that who we are is not the driver, we are the passenger. We're in a limousine, it's being taken somewhere. And the second gate is the driver. Okay, so we've got that. Then the other gates are about perspective. It doesn't change the direction that the driver is going. It's still going in its same direction, but which way is the driver looking? Yeah? So in the Sphinx, the reason it's called the Sphinx is because it has the ability to look in all of these directions. Is it going to look in all these directions? Not necessarily, especially in this version that we're in, the fourth version, because it is based on the first gate. So let me explain the perspectives. So, so many concepts all coming together here. I don't want to talk about roll gates because that's going to make it all too complicated. So, the seventh gate, which is in this cross as the underlying energy, the supporting energy. So somebody who was born on this day will have as their supporting energy 89 days ago, approximately, the 7th and the 13th gate. And today, because we're dealing with the first line, that would be in the third line there. So we're looking at 1 threes, and 1 fours. And but that doesn't matter. What matters is the gate itself. So the 7th gate over here on the logical side is looking forward. So this is the perspective of the driver looking out the windshield, trying to set a pattern for the future. Then on the other side, we have the 13th gate. That's the perspective of the driver looking out the back window at what we've already had. This is collective abstract, and it's trying to find wisdom for everybody from the past. Then we have the first gate, and the perspective of the first gate is just looking at itself. Now, Ra explains this metaphor in a couple of different places and in a couple of different ways. But the important thing to know about it is that that first gate is not really looking out at all. It's only looking at itself. It's what he calls navel gazing. So you could say it's the passenger in the back seat, just not even looking outside. Or you could say it's the driver itself, just looking at itself, navel gazing, just completely taken up in its own process, because its own process is one of pure creation, and that is also a matter of pure mutation. So we already know, well, hopefully we know. If you don't know, I'm telling you now. All individual circuitry is really trying to get a mutation out into the world. So all of us who have individual circuitry, and I'm one of them, specifically because I have the 4323 right there, we're all trying to get what we have as an individual, as a me, as a one, out into the world. It's not about trying to be the best, because you're only having a competition for the best when you have lots of people having the thing. But when you only have one person being the thing, it's an aberration, it's a mutation, it's an individual weirdness, and it needs to be expressed or gotten out to the world somehow. Now, in this case, that one is really wanting to get out to the world through the 8. Luckily enough, today we do have an 8th gate activation. Very, very interesting, because, well, 2 of them actually, because we're going to have the moon moving through 8, and we also have Uranus moving through 8. So that first line is going to be able to create a channel here between the 1 and the 8, making the channel of the presenter, the person who gets their creative contributions out by speaking about who they are and being really purely creative, is going to be activated today for the people who are born today. Also for Art Garfunkel that we're going to be looking at today. He has this channel. And it's not a guarantee. Not everybody who's born with a Sphinx has this 8th gate activation. But when they do, boy, they have all the electrical support that they need to be able to get those creative contributions straight out to the world because it's connected directly to the throat. Now, it's not motorized, which is where we can have problems with the first gate and also the second, because as soon as this person who has, now I'm pointing at myself, but I of course don't have that activation here. But perhaps it's better to use this example over here. As soon as the person who has this connection between the G center and the throat starts to get their ego involved, that's where shit goes astray. That's where it all crumbles into dust and has a problem. Because pure creation is not ego driven. It can't be done by the will. You can't say, I want to get my creative contribution out to the world. It doesn't work that way. It's not individual in terms of, it is individual, but it's not something that the individual can choose by their will. It happens in its own time. And that's why timing is always an issue with creation like this, because it is such a personal kind of thing that's going on. And it's like all things that are coming out of that central individual channel, they're driven by the root, and the root is a pulsing motor, randomly pulsing. So you just have to wait for it to swing around. And when it swings around, whoof, it fires up that center channel and everything gets lit. And that's when you really feel the power of that individual activation. But when it's not there, it's not there. And that's just kind of what creative people need to come to realize and recognize. And of course, that is also why our individual circuitry carries a lot of melancholy or even depression, because when it's not running, then all of us individual people go around going, why not? Why can't I get it out? Why am I alone with this knowledge? Why am I the only one? And we get to feeling very alone, very unseen, and it gets to not be a great experience for us. So there's that. So much. I'm missing some things, but there's just so many layers of what's going on, because there's really a ton of human design that is happening both in the G center itself and in each one of these Sphinx gates. So I could go on at great length, and it's difficult for me sometimes to choose just the little bits and pieces that I want to cover here so that I'm not talking all day. Yeah. 1164 keys calls manifestation, and Ra calls it creation is independent of will, so that he can make that point that when we apply our will to creation, it ain't gonna go right. That's just not the way it works. But when we wait for that creative spirit to come upon us, then things can go properly. And then 2-1 in the earth activation for today is called intuition, intuitive higher knowing, and aesthetics. Now you might want to know, what does aesthetics have to do with the second gate? The second gate is the most yin gate. So we have this real contrast here, because the first gate is the most yang gate, 6 solid lines. So it's just pure individual creation bursting to get out of the person. And then on the other side of that, we have the second gate. This is the magnetic monopole. This is the driver. This is the most receptive, the most female, the most yin. It's 6 broken lines. So it's really the seat of our magnetics. It's what keeps our bodies together in the illusion of the Maya, with what Ra called, now it's an analogy, crystals of consciousness pulled together just for how much we're alive. And then when we die, that's that release of that magnetic energy so that the crystal or the consciousness that's in us can separate from the actual meat of the body, and then that can go its own way. So many interesting concepts, but the one I really wanted to swing around to because I find it interesting is aesthetics. And why does aesthetics have so much to do with being receptive and magnetism? And it's because there's this connection between beauty and truth. So it's kind of like how Occam's razor became a thing in mathematics. And that Occam's razor, for those of you who are not familiar with that concept, is all things being equal, the most easy, the most simple, the most beautiful explanation is most likely to be the one that is the one. And it's because of the same thing. Because truth is to be found in beauty. So we have conceptions, we have ideas, but once we find the most beautiful way, then we find the way with the most truth, which is, in terms of quantum physics, also why love is the thing and reducing entropy, because the more we become love, the more we rise above baser instincts, the more we work together and we're about cooperation, helping, loving, doing nice things, all these things that we think of as good things. The more that we do that, the more we are we're streamlining our process as humans. Humans can really go a huge gamut from being very efficient to being very inefficient. And inefficiency happens when we have greed and fear and war and strife, because then everybody's trying to do their own thing. Everybody's me, me, me. But the Amish taught us a long time ago, if we needed to learn the lesson through the Amish, that when you come together to build a barn, it goes way faster. It's way easier. And then everybody can get a barn, and it's not such a huge problem as it is if one person had to go out and build their own damn barn all the time. It's much more efficient to have everybody working together and plowing together. Which brings me around to an announcement that I have been wanting to make for a while, and that is, if there's somebody who happens to be in the area of Portland, Oregon, and or in its surrounding states or whatever, and wants to come give me a visit here in Portland and do a human design trade, I am definitely looking for a trade in which someone can help me organize my shit. And I've said on this channel many times before, at least it seems many times to me, that my biggest problem is I have all this shit and it's not organized. Now, of course, I do have too much shit and some of that needs to be gotten rid of, but it's the process. And it's gotten beyond me now so that it's too much for me to handle by myself. But if somebody wanted to come and visit me, stay with me, do a human design trade, I would be up for that. So if somebody's interested in that, hit me up. We can talk about it, because I have a bunch of creative things that are being blocked by the fact that my environments are not aesthetic. Now, some of that is beyond my control because I'm living in a house that's being rebuilt while I'm living in it, and that is inefficient in the extreme. I don't recommend it. So some of it I can't do anything about, and that's part of the problem. But there is a lot of things that I could do about if I had enough spare mental room to be able to do those things at all, which I don't. I'm barely making these videos every day. So, let me see where we are. Yeah, we are right about time for me to be looking at Senior Garfunkel. So let me pull up this chart and just show you a few things that I think are interesting that I saw here when I was looking at it just a bit because I was interested in Mr. Art, because I'm always using examples when I'm talking about the channel of mastery. I'm always talking about Simon and Garfunkel, and usually it's Paul Simon who has the depth that's most interesting to me, because Paul Simon is one of my favorite people. But Art Garfunkel has some very interesting things going on as well. So we see here that he is Sphinx in the fourth quarter. Okay, great. And he is a 1-3 because I on purpose picked someone with a first line definition. He does have a split definition, so all these things are connected together to the throat, but there is no actual energetic connection between the throat and what he has going on in his fully unconscious mind. Whoa. So we have a seeker of sense here, somebody who's trying to make sense of things, but even if he can make sense of them, he can't really talk about them without the help of somebody else. And it's quite a bit of help because it's more than just one gate we're missing here. It's a full channel. So he's got to have some kind of interesting connection to somebody in order to be able to speak what's on his mind. But I gather that he was more of the skilled one, the one who had the technical abilities. And of course, they're both musical, I'm sure. I don't want to rob Art of anything here, especially when we see, check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4 activations in the 8th gate. So he would have been very much just dying to get his creative contribution out into the world, not by talking about what's going on in his brain, but by pulling in all of these activations that he's got in the throat center and speaking them in some way, or in this case, of course, singing them. And like who we were looking at yesterday, it was Matthew McConaughey, I believe. We have this 2247 happening in the nodes, which is happening now just in a different line variation. So we have here an adventurer, an unconscious adventurer, and we have somebody who is consciously looking at the nature of money and wanting to make money, someone who's wanting to make a creative contribution, and somebody who has the ability to be a leader. Of course, because he is an eye or an initiator or a manifester, that would have made his life somewhat more difficult for him, because manifestors have, by just their nature, a bit of a prickly aura about them that can be off-putting to other people, especially when they get to be a little bit bossy. And male manifestors have a tendency to be that way. And so when I saw this, I had a little bit of an insight immediately on why it was that Simon and Garfunkel broke up. Simon is, I'm pretty sure, a generator of some kind. Can't remember if he's a straight generator or a manifesting generator. We'll look it up another day. But I thought these 4 8s that he had were very interesting. So he's looking at being a natural creative and interpersonally creative, and the highest level here, of course, it's in the detriment, and then 8-6, so being above being creative and wanting to know what's next on that score as well. What a lot of creative power we have coming on here. And this is really rare, 4 channels coming off of the throat. Just wow. And of course, just these 2 channels here makes him technically a double manifester. Wow. And of course, an emotional manifester without being really aware that he's an emotional manifester. So this is somebody who I would guess, before they start to do their homework, would be creating quite a bit of chaos in the world. That's just my guess, my perspective. Anyone who knows differently is certainly welcome to chime in and say what you know. Another thing that I happen to have noticed is that he has his Uranus return, his full-on return in June of this year. So I think he's still alive. He would have been going through a bit of a challenging time, possibly, if he has not done all of his homework here. What happens over here, to me, it kind of seems like what's going on is we have basic issues to face in our lives, every one of us. And if we haven't faced those issues in our lives, here's the shelf pull by date. Here's the date by which, if you have not handled those issues, you're going to get some sort of a crisis to force you to handle those issues. So this is when he would have had the Saturn right around 30, and then the half Uranus right around 40, and Chiron happening right around 50, and then a second Saturn around 60, and of course this one at 80. So, very interesting things going on there, but what a lot of power in this human, and perhaps that's why Simon and Garfunkel were able to make such a splash in the first place, because they were being driven by a manifester. I don't know. It's an interesting question to look at, and sometimes I wish I knew more about these people who are featured here, but what do we really know about any kind of famous person? All we can do is talk in generalities and look at how interesting this chart is, say, separate from what we might know of that person personally in their life. But that's an example of a Sphinx, someone who is able to see in all of the perspectives, all of the directions of the driver, but is not necessarily doing it because they're so focused on that first gate and just being creative that it's kind of a navel gazing kind of thing. And when I'm talking about Simon and Garfunkel, I often say after they broke up, what happened to Garfunkel? He kind of just fell off the map. And I think that's because of that first gate activation being a first line and first gate Sphinx, that he just kind of went back to doing his own little internal process thing. If anyone knows any different, feel free to chime on in and give your perspective on what you might know about Art Garfunkel or the Cross of the Sphinx, or what it's like to have a first and second gate activations. I, of course, know somebody who has 1 and 2 in their nodes. And I have been studying, as a matter of course of that, what it's like to have in somebody's chart both the absolute most male energy and the absolute most female energy at the same time. A very interesting contrast going on there for somebody. But that's what I have to say about it today. Come back tomorrow and we will talk about the second line and what it's like to be a natural. Until then, ciao.